Welcome back to the Tee 'em Up podcast. I am back here with my co-host Jarrett Huff for another week of NBA basketball. Jarrett, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty well for myself. It was a good week of basketball. The Bulls are still rolling, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, definitely was a good week for the Bulls and a good week for a few other teams around the league. As we're going to kind of just go ahead and jump into things. And the first thing I want to talk about is, Jarrett, let's just go down the rabbit hole once again, man. And it seems like every time me and you talk about this, it's always interesting because we have different takes. But let's talk about LeBron James. And let's talk about how, in my opinion, he's been nothing short of fantastic in his individual play so far this season. But his team has struggled to string together wins. Definitely that's been the story. But try to climb that Western Conference ladder. But I just want to put his season so far into perspective, and then I'll ask you a question, let you kind of get into your thing. So, LeBron is currently averaging 28.7 points per game, which is second in the league behind only Kevin Durant at 29.9. If he's able to maintain this total, it would be the second highest points per game finish in his career, behind when he averaged 30 points per game for the Cavs back in 2007. He's also been efficient scoring the basketball like we'd expect from him. He's shooting a higher field goal percentage than Kevin Durant and Zach LaVine, just to name a few. He's making 36.5% of his threes, which is a higher clip than Duncan Robinson and Donovan Mitchell. He's doing all of this while, adding his usual 7.4 rebounds per game. He is about an assist lower than his average at about 6.6 assists per game, so a little bit lower there. I also want to note that he is averaging 1.8 steals and 1.2 blocks per game, both numbers which closely resemble the kind of prime LeBron stats that we'd see there. So, Jarrett, with all this information and you following the NBA, and obviously it's hard to follow the NBA without hearing about LeBron almost on a nightly basis, is the NBA fans and the media undervaluing the season that he's having so far?
I don't know so much if they're undervaluing as much as they are kind of not feeling bad for him. Now, let's be clear. What LeBron's doing right now at age 37 to keep the Lakers afloat in the Western Conference playoff race right now is nothing short but amazing. And he's definitely putting up one of the greatest post 35 seasons, if not the greatest of all time. But I feel like a lot of people don't feel bad that he's in the situation he's in with the roster he has. This is a team that he chose to go to. These are players that he's either really close with or that he probably pushed management towards signing, recruiting, trading for, whatever they had to do. And they don't feel bad that he has no help, because you see the posts on Instagram or Twitter like LeBron needs help, LeBron this, LeBron that. And then some of the fans and even some media members that choose to weigh in on this are like, well, no, he put himself in this situation. This is the team he wanted. Let him play through. So there, while, yeah, he's playing great, I think that is probably getting overshadowed a little bit by the other side, where it's just basically like, we're done with the whole he needs more help narrative, because the help this is the help he requested, and it's just not panning out. Not every LeBron season is supposed to be a season where he has the best roster, put in the best position to win a championship. All players go through rosters where it doesn't always work out. You look at players like some of those earlier Magic Laker teams when they're trying to go through a coaching change. You look at the early Jordan years where it wasn't really working out. Tons of legends have gone through this. It's just, this is happening on LeBron's latter half of his career. It's impressive nonetheless, but I just think it's more so that people are just done feeling bad for him.
See, I get what you're saying, and I get the whole feeling bad for him, and this is the roster that he chose. And I never really understood the whole, LeBron needs help thing, because everybody needs help. No one's going to go out there and win a championship by themselves. I mean, pretty much anybody besides Bill Russell who won 11 championships way back when the league wasn't as competitive, obviously, as it is now. You need help, and you need good players around you. And LeBron, like most superstars, of course, he does great with better players around him, and that's going to be universal across the league. But I think the league is absolutely undervaluing LeBron this season. I think if I gave you all those numbers that I listed off without telling you who they belong to, they'd be impressive enough in their own to be in the MVP conversation. And I completely understand that team record has a say in MVP. I don't think you can be an MVP, obviously not be in the playoffs. I think you probably have to be at least a top 5 seed in your conference to be in the MVP conversation. And I agree. But LeBron, I mean, currently they said we just pretend that the season's been a complete loss. Currently, they're sixth in the West, which isn't the best. Obviously, they're looks like this last week they're starting to figure things out a little bit. LeBron switching to the 5 and playing center has been a shock even I didn't see coming. They've been 5-0 since he's made that switch. Has really kind of opened up the floor. So maybe they found something there, especially in the absence of Anthony Davis. Done a good job. But if I told you that these numbers were from a 37-year-old in his 18th year in the league, it's insane. And I understand that it's become a cool thing to kind of hate on LeBron. And I don't consider you a LeBron hater. I consider you more of a, you like to take a more, analytical approach. You're not just like, oh, I hate LeBron just because of this, that, or the other. And I respect that. But I think it's overall throughout the league, it's become a cool thing to hate on LeBron over the last 8 years or so. And I understand that he's hurt a lot of fans' favorite teams personally, just by beating them, especially in the Eastern Conference. There was a time where there's a time in the Eastern Conference where no other team besides the team LeBron was on was going to get to the NBA Finals, and that was just a fact. But he's doing what's never been done before. Whether you rank him number 1 in the history of the league or just in your top 10, which I think is absolutely crazy if he's just in your top 10. But you can't deny that he's an all-time great. It's easy to overlook him because he's done it for so long and he's done it at the highest level for so long. But just trust me, if you're one of these guys out there that you just, I can't stand LeBron, you just roll your eyes every time his name gets brought up, just take a second, maybe take a night and just enjoy him and watch him play the game of basketball. Because as much as we like to pretend, he's not going to be around playing basketball forever. I know he's up there in age. And Brady's shown us over in the NFL that who knows how long people can play professional sports now, but just take some time, enjoy his game, appreciate his game while he's still playing at the top of it, because it really is a great thing to watch. And when he's done playing one day, you'll wish that you kind of look back and appreciated him a little bit more. And that's just kind of the message I want to send out there, because I think this season he's having is unprecedented. I understand the team's success has not been there, but his numbers, I don't even think he expected to be up there second in the league in scoring. He's playing 36 minutes a night, which I'm sure at his age would love to be around the 30 mark, not the 36 mark, but he's doing what his team needs him to do. And especially with COVID, especially with injuries to Anthony Davis and the struggles he's had so far this season, the Russell Westbrook, things have, not really gotten figured out, but it's been him and Malik Monk. And Malik Monk, I got to give him a little bit of credit. He's been balling recently, but it's pretty much been those two guys trying to carry the load for the Lakers, and it's been interesting to watch. It's been interesting to watch so far. Oh, man. But so now moving on from the Lakers to another team here in the Western Conference, it's the news that we've been waiting to hear for over 2 years to say, and that's Klay's back, man. The Warriors guard will suit up for his first game today. We're recording here on Sunday, since he tore his ACL during Game 6 of the 2019 NBA Finals. So, Jared, how great is it to see Klay back on the court tonight?
Well, it's always great to see a player return from injury, especially when it's been an injury that's taken them out for the better part of 2 years. And it just helps the league that there's more talent coming back, especially since Klay Thompson is such a likable personality around the league. Like, think what you want about the Warriors, whether you're a fan, you're a hater, whatever. It's kind of hard not to like Klay Thompson. And especially when a player's on a comeback, it's kind of hard not to root for him. Now, that being said, beyond this being a great comeback story and stuff like that, this is great for the Warriors because they're essentially adding an all-star talent to their team. I don't really care what kind of rust Klay will go through or maybe a drop in athleticism, because at the end of the day, I think his floor for he's going to come back as is still an all-star level talent. I mean, that shooting touch is elite, and that was probably the one thing he could really work on. It was his mechanics while he was healing from two injuries. His defense could take a hit, but I think he's still going to be at his worst a good defender. Maybe not the elite perimeter defender we've seen during the Warriors title run. But I'm really excited to see him play. You know, it's kind of weird to put this in perspective. Klay Thompson has had a longer gap from the 2019 finals to today than Michael Jordan was in his first retirement when he stepped away from the Bulls after 3. That's kind of weird to think that he's been gone that long.
Well, it really is crazy to think. And the last time we saw the last kind of basketball memory that anybody has of Kawhi is him, tearing that ACL in Game 6, walking halfway up towards the locker room, coming back out to shoot his free throws, nailing both of his free throws, and then walking back out. That was just, I mean, that's what Klay is, man. He's a certified bucket getter, always has been, and it is no secret that he's a fan favorite, and for good reason. He's always been a guy that kind of goes by the beat of his own drum, just from going with the shoe company that he's with. I believe is it a Chinese shoe company? I always forget what it is. It's something
like Xiling, something
yeah,
like that.
something like that. Just Klay's just always been a little bit different, and I think everybody loves that about him. He's, half of the best shooting backcourt of all time with him and Steph Curry. He's had so many legendary nights in his career where he's just absolutely unstoppable, but knocking down threes. I believe it was that one game where he took like maybe 3 dribbles the entire game. It was all catch and shoot, put up like 50 points or something like that. Dude is a bucket. It's great to see Klay back with the Warriors. It's been such a long time coming, but outside of how great it is to see him back, it's great to see him step back into a situation where they can kind of ease him in at his own pace. And I know Steve Kerr kind of came out and said, hey, we're not messing around. We're going to start Klay, our starting 2 guard or 3, wherever they put him at. But the Warriors have played so great this season that Klay can kind of return to the starting lineup, play as many minutes as he and the coaching staff are comfortable with. They don't have to kind of push him and make him kind of carry this load offensively and defensively if he's not comfortable doing that yet. And I think it'd be great to see, Klay come in, play 15, maybe 20 minutes a game, get his jump shot going, start knocking off that rust. Maybe you see a little bit of his bounce on the defensive end, but you don't have to rely on him. And I think that's going to be great for him in the long run because they know what Klay's capable of, and Klay knows what he's capable of. The dude is not short of confidence whatsoever. But no one really knows what he'll be at the beginning on the defensive end. I think that's what we all kind of are concerned about. We always know he'll be able to knock down a jump shot. He'll probably be able to do that till he's 60 years old. The Warriors are one of the best defensive teams in the league for a reason, and he's definitely going to come back and help out one of the league's top teams. But it's just great to see Klay back 2 years. It's hard to imagine back when he was battling Kawhi in the NBA Finals, and since we haven't really seen much of Kawhi either, but it doesn't believe it's been that long, but
it's great for the league. It's great for the league. That's all I can say.
Oh yeah, their fans are going to be going nuts tonight when they see Klay suit back up for the Warriors. But moving on to another story, kind of about fans, and this kind of goes to the opposite side of the fan spectrum. So this season has been rough, to kind of say the least, about the New York Knicks. Excuse me. They're currently 19-21 instead of the 11th place in the Eastern Conference. But this was kind of pushed to the side this last week as the big news from the Knicks was forward Julius Randle gave his home fans a thumbs down on Thursday during the team's win over the Boston Celtics. Randle stated after the game that he wanted to send a quick message to his fans who were booing in the early parts of the game when the team was struggling. Randle was since fined $25,000 for his use of profane language in his media interviews. But Jarrett, what's going on with Randle and the New York Knicks fans?
Well, this is just typical New York fans culture. I mean, it's a city that's tough to lose in, and the fans will let you know about it. Like, they'll love you when you're good, they'll hate you when you're bad, and it's kind of a tough thing. I feel like, especially for athletes nowadays, where they're a little more sensitive, I would say, just across the board compared to maybe athletes of yesterday. While I understand how just New York sports culture is, doesn't mean I think it's the right way to go about being a fan base. So I'm kind of on Randle's side with just how he feels towards them, even though despite his play hasn't been the best this season, he's kind of regressed from where he was last year. But part of sports, and I guess maybe we don't get to see it as much nowadays with just how fast rosters get rebuilt and breaking and taken down or players move. But part of the journey of a growing team is to go through the growing pains. And New York, while it definitely had a great season last year in terms of where they've been in the past, this season was maybe a little more back to reality, or just trying to figure out what direction to take this team in, as they have a bunch of younger players. I mean, look at RJ Barrett. He's only 20 years old.
Yeah.
So this team's going to go through growing pains. And unfortunately for this team, they don't really have a fan base that understands that. They don't have a fan base that is patient. And I mean, to New York Knicks fans understanding, it's understandable that they're impatient with just the last 20 years that their franchise has taken. But okay, your franchise is headed in a hopefully a good direction right now with this team and this core. Just give him a chance, be patient. But unfortunately, that's just for this Knicks team. That's not the reality of the situation. So I kind of understand Randall's frustration with the team. I totally understand the thumbs down and the comments he made. But yeah, this is just having a New York fan base. This is what being a Knicks player you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, this was the latest ugly episode in the Knicks' ugly season so far. You know, they came in with such high hope for this year, seeing some recent success, and they just straight up struggled. And as far as Randall goes, I'm okay with him giving that thumbs down, man. The way I see it, they were booing him and his team when they were struggling, and when they started to turn things around, he just gave that same energy right back to them. And I'm completely okay with this. And I think that those fans got a little taste of their own medicine in a simple but very effective way for Randall. That to me, it wasn't offensive. And let's be honest, just like you said, New York is a tough town. It's a tough sports town, especially for the New York Knicks who haven't seen success in a long time. They can handle a little back talk from their stars. They're not this, they're not. I got a feeling a lot of people in the crowd probably enjoyed it a little bit of like, hey, you got me. You guys proved me wrong. You came back, you beat the Boston Celtics. And obviously, being in New York, they want to beat the Boston Celtics. That's always a big game for them, too. But I think it's fine, to have a little back and forth with the fans. And I think in the NBA is one of those sports where you can do it a little bit more, especially because the fans are so close to you, right? They're sitting courtside. You see a lot of interaction with fans, whether for good or for bad. But I liked this. I loved the energy from Randall, just like a little bit of, hey, if you weren't with us when we're down, don't be with us when we're up type deal where, hey, this is the team we have. We're going to continue to fight. They still think that they can do something in the Eastern Conference. They are currently sitting at 11th, but 19-21. They're not too far out of it. We're a good week. They can find themselves sitting at the 8th or the 7th seed and kind of go from there. So they've struggled. They're not out of it. I don't see them turning around, but I know internally in that locker room, they feel like they can. But I think the fine was okay for, profane language is probably a good thing to have that fine because you want to keep it obviously as PG as possible when it comes to the media and the fans. And I understand that. But to me, the overall message, I was fine with that from Julius Randle. I don't think, the team needs to step in. I don't think Julius Randle needs to come out and have any sort of apology. I think it's just kind of a mutual understanding going forward between the fans and between Randle and that team that just, hey, don't boo us when we're down because, we're trying, and then come back and try to cheer us on when we make a comeback. Like that, they don't want to hear that. And I completely understand that. And then we want to head back now to the Golden State Warriors to talk about another player on the team. And the other team's star guard in Steph Curry really got off to a hot start this year as he was really the undoubted MVP frontrunner at the beginning of the season. But more recently, he's kind of been struggling, especially this last week, to get going while his team is still continuing to find wins. His team's not struggling alongside of him. But Jared, what have you made of Curry's kind of recent struggles, and is he still your MVP frontrunner?
He's at the moment, he's not exactly my front runner right now. Although that's to say that there's no reason why he can't jump back into that. No problem. Cause in my opinion, across a lot of players, the MVP race is close. There's really no clear breakaway player from the pack. While Curry, in my opinion, has been the top guy for most of the season, it wasn't by much. You got guys like Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, who's slowly rising up from the depths, Ja Morant, and I'm even going to throw DeMar DeRozan's name in there. There are tons of players have been having spectacular seasons for their franchises. Now, this last, about 16 games dating back to the end of November, Curry's kind of been in the slump. 24 points per game, 5 assists, 36.7% from the field as a whole, and 34.7% from three. These are very subpar numbers for Curry. But it could be some fatigue setting in. I mean, he has been the main engine for this Warriors franchise the last 2 seasons without Klay, and starting out this season again. Now this has been his best roster since. But Curry's getting a little older. And just some nights he's not going to have it. Now, I kind of think his struggles were overblown by that now viral video of him kind of bricking that floater off to the right side of the rim between the backboard, because you've kind of seen it go around on Instagram in circles as like memes and stuff like that. But I'm not worried about Curry. I'm not concerned, and I fully expect him to be an MVP contender all season.
Yeah, to me, it worries me a little bit. And what the worry kind of comes into is it seems like all this was kind of fed by him, kind of the anticipation of him breaking the Ray Allen 3-point record, where it seemed like leading up to it a little bit, he was struggling just a little bit, not much. I mean, we just expect so much from him, where it looked like he was kind of forcing threes a little bit. And one thing about Curry is he's been such a great shooter, but he never seems like he forces threes. It always seems like when he puts them up, they're going to go in, and he's always either in transition, he's finding open spaces on the floor. But kind of over this last week, especially, I just kind of broke it down a little bit. The Warriors had 3 games over this last week since we last talked. And Curry, he played in 2 of them. In the first game against the Heat, Steph scored 9 points while shooting 3 of 17 from the field, just 1 of 10 from 3. He had 3 rebounds and 10 assists. In the second game against the Mavs, he notched just 14 points, while shooting 5 of 24 from the field and 1 of 9 from 3, added 9 rebounds and 5 assists, then sat out the Pelicans game due to a quad injury. So I'm a little worried just about the amount of shots that he's missing. You know, if he was having games where it just wasn't his night and they went elsewhere, I wouldn't be as worried. But he has shot 2 of 19 from 3 in his last 2. And that's just not Steph Curry. You know, I'm sure his quad injury has kind of helped lead to these numbers a little bit. The team is still in a good position, you know, even through his struggles. And but they definitely need him to find his groove again. And I think if, you know, shooters go through slumps, that's just what they do, especially the greatest shooter of all time. We've seen him go through a little bit of slumps. It's usually not as long for Curry just because of how great he actually is. But, you know, right now, I don't think he's the MVP front runner. I think his stock is falling fast just because there's tough competition. And like you said, there's not a lot of separation there at the top of the MVP, you know, numbers, where there's not a lot of these top 5 guys that are having rough weeks where you can see Curry start to climb back up into the kind of top consideration. But I'm a little worried just because it seemed like he was pressing things. I'm worried about the amount of shots that he's missing. But I think overall, Steph Curry is one of the best players in the league. He's been that way for a long time. And I think he just needs to kind of find his groove again, personally. But Jarrett brings us to one of the topics that we are always the most excited to talk about, and that's a lot of lists that we get. And here's a little bit different list. So this is kind of the first returns we've seen of the fan voting for NBA All-Stars this year have been released a couple days ago. And I thought we'd just go through it. So I'm sure you probably have it pulled up somewhere next to you, but just kind of.
I do.
So Jarrett, how does this list look to you? Did the fans get this right? I mean, it's the fans. So let's see what it looks like.
So there aren't too many egregious things, but I want to start off by saying that the first returns always reminds me of just how fast the season seems to fly by. Like, I could have sworn opening night was a few weeks ago, and now we're already in the start of January, and we have the first All-Star voting returns. Now, this year is a constant reminder for me to say that fan voting shouldn't even be a thing. For the All-Star game. I look at the All-Star selections as a legacy award. I look at it as a test of what this player was in this moment in this season and just how good they were. I think it's a recognition of that. And I don't think it's something fans should vote for personally. But we live in a world where we want to serve the fans, so this is what they get to have some determination on the All-Star game. Thank God it's not the only thing that determines what players make it in, as I believe the fan vote's only 50% of it, thankfully. So I'll just start with my reasons to cancel the fan vote. And I got a few names on here. The first and foremost, the guy we talked about a lot today, Klay Thompson. The man hasn't played basketball in 2 years. I get he's part of the Warriors fan base. Like, he's a huge fan favorite. But he shouldn't be 4th in voting.
Yeah,
that's it's ludicrous. Like, I get it, fan favorite player, but he hasn't played. He doesn't deserve
ahead of
playing in the game.
Ahead of Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell,
ridiculous,
Damian Lillard,
ridiculous,
even Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Edwards, who is underrated. Anthony Edwards should be higher in general, but that's just a list of the guys that he's ranked above.
It's crazy. Now, aside from Klay Thompson. And I will say, at the very least, this is a more reasonable selection, as all the names on this list are going to be. But Carmelo Anthony, that is definitely a here we're going to give you your flowers kind of vote for the career you've had and also just part of being part of Laker Nation. So that's kind of the combined effect of that. Westbrook getting the just basically the popularity of who he is, and also the Laker Nation vote. LaMarcus Aldridge was actually a name I was surprised to see, and it could be a little bit of like a post, like he came back from retirement. He's playing decently well for the Nets given his advanced age and his time away from basketball, but he's not an all-star level player. Kyrie Irving has played one game, so get him out. He's just as bad of an offender as Clay. And then Derrick Rose, which I have to say, it's is he the highest New York Knick vote getter?
I believe so. Yeah, I think
he's the only Knick on this list.
He is, yeah.
So not only does that speak to the popularity of Derrick Rose and maybe the Knicks fan base, but again, there have been the past couple of years, I would have kind of supported Rose's place on this list a little bit. That's a little bit of my bias as a Rose fan, but he hasn't played basketball in about a month.
Yeah.
And it's not one of his better years since his rebirth in Minnesota. Now, there are some pleasant surprises for me to this list. Andrew Wiggins, while clearly he's much higher on the list than I ever expected him to be, he's having a fantastic season with the Golden State Warriors. And I think one of the big reasons of why they're playing as unpredictably well as they have. Jarrett Allen's another pleasant surprise, along with teammate Darius Garland. It only makes sense that some Cleveland players would show up somewhere on the list, just given Cleveland's season so far. Miles Bridges has been playing really well in Charlotte. Now, he's kind of cooled off from his hot start at the start of the season, but nonetheless, he's been having a pretty good year. And then Tyler Hero for the Miami Heat. I thought that was a pleasant surprise as well. And then my last little thing I want to say, how about DeMar DeRozan? I believe he's is he fifth? No, he's sixth in fan voting. So not only like that's like just the world recognizing like what kind of talent DeMar DeRozan is. I mean, he's only been a 4-time All-Star, which to me, when I hear that, I'm like, he's only been an All-Star 4 times. Like, it's crazy.
It seems like he should be a lot more.
He should have been an All-Star last year for sure. He should have probably gotten that spot over Mike Conley. But this is probably because Mike Conley's never gotten an All-Star, so we'll give it the extra injury spot to him. But DeRozan has double the points or double the votes of Zach LaVine, which I find crazy. But that's just my takeaways on the All-Star voting. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. And I want to lead off the same way that you led off and just say that I hate fan voting, having any sort of, deciding factor in All-Stars, because I'm just going to say fans are generally stupid. And the number one, and that didn't change here. And the number one, backings to my statement there is obviously Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson, who are both all-star caliber players. They just haven't played a game. It's like if they put Ben Simmons up there, it's like, okay, he hasn't played a single game, but he's going to come back and play the all-star game. That would be ridiculous. But the top to me is good because it's really hard to kind of get LeBron, KD, Curry, and I'm glad to see DeMar DeRozan get his flowers as well. He definitely deserves it. But there are some bad ones on here, man. It's just one of the big ones for me that's not really a joke is why is James Harden ahead of Trae Young and Zach LaVine? I mean, I get it. James Harden's kind of started to turn the season around a little bit, but Trae Young's been a great player. And I posted a TikTok not so long ago. I think Trae Young is very underrated in the NBA right now for what he's doing for the Atlanta Hawks. I think he's really transforming his game. And Zach LaVine, I mean, him and DeMar DeRozan form, I think is still the highest scoring pair in the NBA this season, if I'm not mistaken, of two teammates, Eastern Conference guards. I think Ja Morant should be ahead of Luka. I think Jimmy Butler should currently be ahead of Jason Tatum. There's just a few of the ones that maybe a little bias is creeping in, but like I wanted to touch also on Tyler Hero, where you talked about Kyrie Irving being 6. I think Tyler Hero obviously has done more this season to help his team than Kyrie Irving has. He should be moved up. I think Tyler Hero has done more than Derrick Rose has as well. But I was glad to see him start to get some inclusion on this list. There are some ones that are kind of interesting. I think you could probably move Karl Anthony Towns up. He's currently 7th on the front court in the Western Conference. I'd be fine moving him up ahead of Anthony Davis, heck, even Draymond Green, and maybe even Andrew Wiggins. He's been playing some great ball so far this season. But I am glad to kind of know that these aren't the end all be all, that it is a part of the equation, but it's not the whole equation. And we'll kind of see where things kind of pan out. But it's also interesting to note that if things hold, this would be kind of the first time since they switched up the All-Star format that LeBron James wouldn't be the team captain of his team, because right now it'd be Steph Curry over in the Western Conference, which who knows, things could change. He's about 500,000 votes ahead of LeBron right now. Curry is, but right now it'd be KD and Steph Curry, which would be interesting to see, two former teammates. And the first time LeBron wouldn't be the one picking teams, he'd be the one getting picked, which would be interesting to see. But
I think KD and Curry would be fun, even though I also hate the team picking aspect of All-Star Weekend. I miss West versus East so much.
No, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the picks.
I think especially this year, it'd be more interesting to have West versus East because the talent gap is not big at all. And in fact, it might even be in the East's favor.
Yeah, it might be
this year. So I don't know. One more thing I got to say is what I also kind of like about the first returns is I feel like usually this is kind of when it balances itself out, because now people are like, oh, why does this person have so many votes? I'm going to start voting for this person more because just to kind of correct itself.
Because you never really know.
Yeah, because, like I was half expecting, honestly, to see Zaza Pachulia's name towards the top, like even though he's been long retired. It's just, I hate fan voting so much.
Yeah. Well, these are obviously the first returns, and hopefully the second returns will help start to fix some of the mistakes. But with the fans, I'm not really holding my breath. So we'll kind of see how that all ends up.
Give LaVine more votes, people. Come on.
Oh, man. Moving on here to our last and our final segment on the Team Up podcast. And that's obviously Tee 'em Up. So, Jarrett, you got a technical foul. Who are you tossing it out to this week?
I'm tossing it out to Bradley Beal. So during the Bulls game a couple nights ago, he was kind of teaching Ayo Dosunmu, who I believe on the play, the ball went out of bounds on him. So Bradley Beal kind of gave him pointers like, hey, if you do this move like this, and instead of doing like that, you should be able to score. So the next time down for the Bulls, Ayo, who had 18 points in that game and was spectacular, did the exact move that Bradley Beal told them about on him, to where after that, Bradley Beal was like, hey, I told you to do it later, not on me. And they had a nice little laugh about it. But even though, while in all seriousness, it was kind of nice to see kind of the older generation imparting wisdom to the up and coming generation. Bradley Beal, you're in the middle of a game, man. Your team is fighting an Eastern Conference potential playoff rival.
Yeah.
You need all the spots you can get. Worry about that after the game. Even though I am happy that it worked out for one of my players on my team, man, you got to be a little more competitive. Share your wisdom after the game. You're in the thick of the Eastern Conference battle, so I got to tee you up for that. You're not helping your team by making Ayo a better player, because that man, he's good.
Yeah, Bradley just looking out for the future generation, man. This week I got to tee up. For me, this was probably a game not a lot of people saw. It was a late night game over on the West Coast. It was the Heat versus the Trailblazers, and the Trailblazers have really had a rough go of it this season. But I'm teeing up a particular referee in the Heat versus Trailblazers game who decided it was acceptable to toss Kyle Lowry for passing him the basketball. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I don't know if you saw it, but it was absolutely ridiculous. Lowry softly tossed the ball to the ref, who was looking right at him, and then delivered him his second technical foul, gave him a nice little ejection from the game, like Kyle Lowry was trying to throw the basketball at him or something. But too often do we talk about these refs making themselves part of the game, and this was another one of those times. It was one of those where it didn't affect the outcome of the game. The Heat were still able to win, although it did get pretty tight there towards the end. But it's definitely one of those where Kyle Lowry is a leader on and off the court for the Miami Heat. They're already missing a lot of their key guys. That was a game that if they were facing a different opponent, that was an ejection that could have very well cost them a basketball game. And you hate to see that for Kyle Lowry. He's not throwing the basketball, and it wasn't even a play where anyone was mad. It was just simple foul. Just kind of tossed him the basketball, said here, and we'll set everything up. And then, nope, you're tossed from the game. But I don't know if this was a young ref just trying to prove something, but this was the wrong moment, and the refs just need to do better overall. Fans, they come to watch stars. They don't come to watch you abuse your power because you got your feelings hurt. It doesn't make any sort of sense. This was a ridiculous ejection. And you know what? For you teeing up Kyle Lowry, I'm teeing up you. I don't know your name, but the referee in the Heat and Trailblazers game this week. But that's all we have for this week. Thank you for joining us on the Tee 'em Up podcast. Be sure to check us out on @TMUp at all of our social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all over the place. And be back next week with another episode as we continue to get deeper and deeper, closer to that All-Star break and deeper into this NBA season. So thank you all for listening and have a great rest of your day.
Make sure to share us with your family and friends.